22C, we're continuing on with exponents. Still evaluating, still writing exponential form, still expanded product. We're just going to continue on with what we learned yesterday. So just a quick review of what we did yesterday. Exponential form is if you see an exponent. Okay, this is read as 3 to the 4th power. If you expand it out as expanded product, you take the base, which is 3, and expand it out 4 times, which is the exponent. So this will be 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. If I asked you to evaluate, that would be the 81. Okay? On your notes is this practice again. Go ahead and do it with me. Write it as expanded product. 5 squared would be what? 5 times 5. And then evaluate, which is 25. 2 to the 4th power, expanded product would be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is positive 16. Negative 3 in parentheses, 2 to the 3rd power would be negative 3, negative 3, negative 3, which is negative 27. And then negative 9 times negative 9 would be positive 81. Excellent. Questions about yesterday's stuff? Okay, so today I kind of briefly talked about it yesterday, but we're going to go more in depth with it today. These are the special exponent problems where there's no parentheses now. So yesterday I told you parentheses are really, really important because if there's no parentheses, it's a different answer. Here we have just a negative and then 4 to the 3rd power. See how the 4 is touching the exponent but the negative isn't? It's just the negative hanging out in the front. The 4 is what's repeating. So if you write it as expanded product, it would be negative hanging out in front and only the 4 repeating. This time it's not negative 4, negative 4, negative 4. It's negative 4, 4, 4. Okay? And then negate it. Yeah, so this would be negative 64. Which is on your paper, so please write this down as we go. The next one says negative 6 squared. Again, the negative is not being squared. It is not anywhere close to the exponent. Whereas yesterday it was in parentheses, so it was being squared. But today it's not. So this would be written as a negative outside and then repeat the 6. So this answer would not be positive. It would be negative 36. Yesterday it looked like this, where we wrote negative 6 times negative 6, and it would be a positive 36. But today, see how the negative is not being squared? So the positive is no longer, and the answer is now a negative answer. So just be careful, don't get it confused with what we did yesterday. It's not in parentheses, so there's only one negative, it's not going to be repeated. So like Sean just said, if you see this kind of problem, your answer will be negative because there's only one negative. It doesn't get repeated. Okay? So now you have very similar problems to practice with. Very similar to the 1 through 4 at the top there. If we have negative 5 squared but it's not in parentheses, what would the answer be? Negative 25. Go ahead and write it as expanded product as practice for now. And then write negative 25. Number 6 has it in parentheses. So as expanded product, is the negative being repeated? Yes. Yes, because it is in parentheses. So it's the whole thing. The negative 8 is being repeated. So this will be positive 64. Number 7, is the negative being repeated? No, it's not being cubed. So it hangs out in the front when you write it as expanded product. And only repeat the 9. So your answer would be negative 729. Is number 8's negative being repeated? Yes. This one is. So your answer will be negative 7 times negative 7 times negative 7, which is negative 343. We're going to do the same thing with fractions. Fractions are usually in parentheses because that's telling you the entire fraction is being repeated. If it's not in parentheses, then it's not. So here we have the negative hanging out in the front, and then the 2/5 is repeating. The squared is on the outside, so it's telling you that the 2/5 is repeating. So negative, and then 2/5 times 2/5, which is negative 4 over 25. Can you do number 10? Go ahead. You should have a negative hanging out in front because it's not being repeated. It's not in the parentheses, so there's only one. And then the 3/7 gets repeated 3 times. So 3 times 3 times 3 is 27, and 7 times 7 times 7 is, and make sure you have a negative in your answer because there is one that stays there the whole time. We're multiplying same bases just like we did yesterday, but this time we're going to involve negatives. So yesterday we just had same base. This will be 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4, which is 4 to the 5th power. Good. So today, the first one has a negative, but is it included in the squaring process? It's not included. It's not in parentheses, so you need to leave it outside. So negative and then the 2 times 2, then times 2 times 2 times 2. So it would still be 2 to the 5th, but it's negative 2 to the 5th. No parentheses, because the negative is not involved in the powering process. Be really careful that you don't write this, because that is different. Number 12, is the negative involved? Is it in parentheses? No, so it's not going to be squared. There's only one negative out in front, so leave it out in front. So negative 3 times 3, then times another 3. So it'll be negative 3 to the 3rd. No parentheses. So far so good? Okay, same thing with the fractions. Fractions are usually in parentheses because it's telling you that whole fraction is being repeated. So you have to put it in parentheses, otherwise it looks like only the numerator is being squared. So this time again, is number 13's negative being included? No, so it's only the positive 1/2 that's going to be repeating with the multiplication. So negative half times half times half times half times half. How many total are there? So negative, and then in parentheses the half, then to the 5th power. Make sure to leave the negative outside because it's not being raised to the 5th power. Also, if you write it like this, that's not the same thing because you're not going to be squaring the 2 then. I mean, not squaring, raising to the 5th power the 2. It has to be in parentheses. But when you look at problems like number 12, which was negative 3 to the 3rd power, if you did this, negative 3 to the 3rd, that's the same thing because that's just a single number. But if you did this, that's not the same. Okay? Does that make sense? Number 14, is negative involved? No, it's outside the parentheses. So it's not being raised to the 6th power. So it'll be negative, then 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4. How many 1/4s are there? 9. There's 9. Leave the negative outside. It is not being raised to the 9th power. Any questions about how to do this? Great. Let's go into writing it as a single base and exponent, also called exponential form. So here, yesterday we learned negative 2, which is in parentheses, is being repeated 4 times. So you write it as negative 2 in parentheses still to the 4th power. Today, some of it is not in parentheses, like this one. Negative is hanging out outside. So it's not negative times negative times negative, it's just one negative. So how would you write this, Sean? Negative and then 7 to the 3rd power. If you write it like this, that's the same thing, but you don't need the parentheses because there's nothing else in there. It's just one number. Okay. Number 16. Go ahead and give this one a shot. So this one should be, yesterday we learned this part. The negative is 8 in parentheses, so it stays in parentheses and it's 4 times. Today we learned there is a negative outside, so that has to stay there. So this one should be your final answer. Negative 8 to the 4th power. Any questions? Awesome. Today's lesson is done. Number 2s, what'd you learn today? Ready? Share.